Marcus Williams walked into the small-town diner with his sleeves rolled up, not caring who saw the intricate tattoo covering his entire left forearm. The black ink formed what looked like a complex map, with strange symbols and numbers scattered throughout. Most people who saw it assumed it was just another military tattoo, something soldiers got to look tough or remember their service. The diner fell quiet as Marcus took a seat at the counter. He was new in town, having moved to Cedar Falls just 3 weeks ago after leaving the army. The locals weren't used to strangers, especially ones who looked like they had stories to tell. Marcus was tall and lean, with graying hair at his temples and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "What'll it be, hun?" asked Betty, the waitress who had been working at the diner for 20 years. She tried not to stare at the tattoo, but her curiosity got the better of her. "Coffee and whatever pie you recommend," Marcus replied with a small smile. His voice was calm and steady, the kind that came from years of giving orders and making tough decisions. At a corner booth, 3 young men were snickering and pointing at Marcus's arm. Jake Morrison, the loudest of the group, had grown up in Cedar Falls and thought he owned the place. He nudged his friends and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at that guy's arm. Probably thinks that fancy tattoo makes him special or something. I bet he got it done at some cheap parlor near the base." His friends laughed, encouraged by his boldness. "Yeah, probably cost him $50 and tells everyone it means something deep," added Tommy Rodriguez, trying to impress Jake with his mockery. Marcus heard every word, but didn't turn around. He had dealt with people like this before. He simply sipped his coffee and waited for his pie, watching the reflection of the 3 men in the diner's front window. Betty brought over a slice of apple pie and leaned in slightly. "Don't mind them boys," she whispered. "They don't know any better." "It's fine," Marcus replied quietly. "Some people see what they want to see." The mocking continued for several minutes. Jake grew bolder, raising his voice even more. "Hey, military man, what's that scribbly tattoo supposed to be?" "Your grocery list." The entire diner was now watching, some patrons looking uncomfortable while others seemed entertained by the confrontation. Marcus continued eating his pie, seemingly unbothered by the attention. That's when the front door chimed, and Colonel Patricia Hayes walked in. She was a woman in her late 50s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and the kind of posture that spoke of decades in uniform. She had recently retired and moved to Cedar Falls to be closer to her sister, but few people in town knew about her military background. Colonel Hayes scanned the room and immediately noticed the tension. Her eyes fell on Marcus's tattoo and her expression changed completely. The casual look on her face was replaced by something much more serious, almost shocked. She walked directly to the counter and took the seat next to Marcus. "Excuse me," she said quietly, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to command. "Could I take a closer look at your arm?" Marcus turned to face her and their eyes met. There was an instant recognition between them, not of faces but of shared understanding. He slowly extended his arm toward her. Colonel Hayes studied the tattoo carefully, her finger tracing some of the symbols without actually touching his skin. Her face grew pale as she examined the intricate details. The numbers weren't random and the symbols weren't decorative. They were coordinates, call signs, and coded information that only a select few would recognize. "Where did you serve?" she asked in a low voice. "Afghanistan, Iraq, and a few places that aren't on most maps," Marcus replied, matching her quiet tone. The colonel nodded slowly, her respect for the man beside her growing with each passing second. She had seen tattoos like this before, but only on the arms of the most elite soldiers, the ones who had been places and done things that most people would never know about. Jake, still oblivious to the shift in atmosphere, called out again. "Hey, lady, you checking out his comic book tattoo too? Maybe he can tell you what superhero he thinks he is." Colonel Hayes turned in her seat to face the young man. Her movement was slow and deliberate, and when she spoke, her voice carried across the entire diner with crystal clarity. "Son, I suggest you stop talking before you embarrass yourself further." Jake laughed, thinking he had found another target for his humor. "Oh, what are you, his mom? Going to defend his little drawing?" The colonel stood up slowly, her full authority now on display. Even in civilian clothes, there was no mistaking her bearing. That little drawing represents more courage and sacrifice than you'll likely see in your entire lifetime. The diner had gone completely silent. Even the cook had stopped working to listen. Betty stood frozen with a coffee pot in her hand, sensing that something important was happening. That tattoo, Colonel Hayes continued, her voice growing stronger, contains information that helped save the lives of hundreds of soldiers. Those symbols represent classified operations, and those numbers are coordinates of places where this man risked everything for his country. Marcus remained seated, uncomfortable with the attention but grateful for the colonel's intervention. He had never expected anyone in this small town to understand what his tattoo really meant. I've only seen markings like that on the arms of soldiers, who were part of the most dangerous and classified missions our military has ever undertaken, the colonel said, her eyes never leaving Jake's face. So before you mock something you don't understand, you might want to consider that you're looking at a genuine American hero. Jake's face had turned red, and his friends were now staring at their hands, wishing they could disappear. The weight of their ignorance was settling in, and the entire diner could feel their shame. Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. Colonel, with respect, I'm just a man who did his job. Nothing more, nothing less. And that, Colonel Hayes replied, turning back to him with a slight smile, is exactly what makes you a hero. The silence in the diner stretched on, broken only by the soft clinking of coffee cups and the distant sound of traffic outside. Everyone present knew they had just witnessed something significant, though most of them didn't fully understand what. The next morning, Marcus found himself thinking about the encounter at the diner. He had moved to Cedar Falls hoping for a quiet life, away from the memories and the weight of his past service. But Colonel Hayes had recognized something in his tattoo that most people would never see, and it stirred up feelings he thought he had buried. He was working in his small garden behind the rented house when he heard a car pull up in his driveway. Through the side gate, he saw Colonel Hayes walking toward his front door, carrying what looked like a manila folder. Around back, he called out, wiping dirt from his hands with an old towel. Colonel Hayes made her way to the backyard, her expression serious but not unfriendly. She was dressed in casual clothes again, but her military bearing was unmistakable even in jeans and a simple blouse. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, she said, offering a slight smile. I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I shouldn't have made your business public like that. Marcus shook his head. You don't owe me an apology, Colonel. Those boys needed to hear what you said. Please call me Patricia. I'm retired now. She held up the folder. I also wanted to show you something if you have a few minutes. They sat on his small back porch and Patricia opened the folder carefully. Inside were old photographs, military documents, and maps. She pulled out a black and white photo of a group of soldiers standing in front of a helicopter. This was taken in 1987, she said, pointing to a young woman in the photo. That's me, fresh out of West Point on my first classified mission in Central America. Look at my arm. Marcus leaned closer and saw a tattoo on the young Patricia's forearm. It was smaller than his but contained similar symbols and numbers. His eyes widened as he recognized some of the markings. Operation Silent Thunder, he said quietly. Patricia nodded. You know about it? Only bits and pieces. It was before my time, but some of the older guys talked about it, said it was one of the first times the military used permanent markings to carry mission-critical information. That's right. Patricia pulled out another document. The tattoos were developed for soldiers on deep cover missions, places where traditional communication methods were too risky. The information was encoded in the artwork, hidden in plain sight. Marcus traced one of the symbols on his own arm. Mine contains extraction points, safe house locations, and contact codes for 3 different countries. If I had been captured, anyone who could read it would know how to get me home, or how to continue the mission if you didn't make it back, Patricia added soberly. They sat in silence for a moment, both understanding the weight of what they carried on their skin. These weren't just tattoos. They were living documents of classified operations, permanent reminders of secrets that could never be fully shared. How many of us are there? Marcus asked. Fewer than you might think. The program was discontinued in 2010 after a security review. Too risky, they said. The information was too valuable to have permanently marked on soldiers' bodies. Patricia pulled out a list of names. According to my contacts, there are maybe 50 active tattoos like yours and mine still out there. Marcus studied the list, recognizing a few names. Some of these people are listed as missing in action. Or worse, Patricia replied grimly. That's part of why I wanted to talk to you. There have been some concerning developments lately. She pulled out newspaper clippings and printed articles from various sources. The headlines were scattered across different dates and locations. Veteran found dead in apparent robbery. Former soldier missing after hiking trip. Military tattoo artist dies in car accident. At first glance, these look like random incidents, Patricia explained. But look closer at the details. Every one of these people had one of the encoded tattoos. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. You think someone is targeting us? I think someone has figured out what these tattoos really are and wants the information they contain. Patricia's voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the concern underneath. The question is who and what they plan to do with it. Marcus leaned back in his chair processing this information. He had thought his fighting days were over, that he could finally live a normal life in a quiet town, but it seemed his past wasn't ready to let him go. What do you think we should do? He asked. For now, be careful. Don't let anyone photograph your tattoo and be aware of your surroundings. I've been in touch with a few other veterans who have these markings and we're sharing information. Patricia stood to leave, gathering her papers back into the folder. There's something else, she said, hesitating at the gate. That young man from the diner yesterday, Jake Morrison. He's been asking questions around town about you, wanting to know where you came from, what you did in the military. Probably just curious after being embarrassed, Marcus suggested, though he made a mental note to keep an eye on Jake. Maybe. But in our line of work, curiosity can be dangerous. Patricia handed him a business card with just a phone number on it. Call me if anything seems off, no matter how small. After she left, Marcus sat on his porch for a long time, staring at his tattoo. What had once been a source of pride and remembrance now felt like a target painted on his arm. The symbols that had once meant safety and connection to his brothers in arms now made him feel exposed and vulnerable. He thought about covering the tattoo, maybe getting it altered or removed entirely. But he knew he couldn't do that. These markings represented more than just military operations. They represented the men and women who had served alongside him, some of whom never made it home. To erase the tattoo would be to erase their memory. As the sun set over Cedar Falls, Marcus made a decision. If someone was indeed hunting veterans with encoded tattoos, they would find that he wasn't an easy target. He had survived too much and seen too many battles to go quietly into retirement. He went inside and began making preparations, checking his old equipment and contacting people from his past that he trusted. If a war was coming to his quiet town, he would be ready for it. The tattoo on his arm seemed to pulse in the lamplight. Its secret still safe, but its bearer now fully alert to the dangers that those secrets might bring. 3 days after Patricia's visit, Marcus noticed the first signs that something was wrong. A black sedan had been parked across from his house for 2 hours, its occupants never getting out. When he went to investigate, the car drove away quickly, but not before he memorized the license plate. That evening at the local grocery store, Marcus spotted Jake Morrison following him through the aisles. The young man was trying to be subtle, pretending to shop while keeping Marcus in sight. When Marcus confronted him near the dairy section, Jake became flustered and made excuses about coincidentally needing milk. Funny thing about coincidences, Marcus said calmly. I don't believe in them. Jake hurried away, but Marcus's instincts were now fully activated. Someone had gotten to the local troublemaker, either with money or threats, and was using him to gather intelligence. Marcus called Patricia that night using the number she had given him. She answered on the first ring as if she had been expecting his call. They're watching me, he said without preamble. Same here. Started yesterday. Black cars, people asking questions about my military service at the grocery store and post office. Patricia's voice was tense. I think it's time we took this more seriously. Agreed. Do you have contact information for the other veterans you mentioned? Some of them. I managed to reach 3 others in different states. They're all reporting similar surveillance. One of them, a woman named Sarah Chen in Colorado, said someone broke into her apartment but didn't take anything valuable. They just photographed her tattoo while she was at work. Marcus felt his blood run cold. They're mapping the tattoos, trying to decode the information. That's what I think too. The question is whether they're foreign agents, criminal organizations, or something else entirely. Does it matter? If they want what's in our skin, they're not going to ask nicely for it. Patricia was quiet for a moment. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. We need to draw them out. Force them to make a move while we still have some control over the situation. What do you have in mind? Tomorrow is the town's annual Veterans Day celebration. Big crowd, lots of attention. If we both show up wearing short sleeves, make our tattoos visible, it might force their hand. Marcus understood the logic, but didn't like the risk. You want to use ourselves as bait. Better than waiting for them to pick us off one by one in private. At least in public, there will be witnesses. The next morning, Marcus prepared carefully for what might be his last day in Cedar Falls. He cleaned his old service pistol and tucked it under his jacket, then dressed in a short-sleeved shirt that would display his tattoo clearly. If someone wanted to see his ink, he would give them a good look. The Veterans Day celebration was held in the town square, with food booths, a small parade, and speeches from local officials. Marcus arrived early and positioned himself where he could see all the entrances and exits. Patricia showed up an hour later, also wearing short sleeves, her own tattoo clearly visible. They didn't speak to each other directly, but stayed within sight of one another. Marcus noticed several people he didn't recognize in the crowd, including a woman with short blonde hair who seemed more interested in the veterans than the celebration itself. Mayor Johnson gave a speech thanking the local veterans for their service, and Marcus was surprised when his name was called as one of the town's newest veteran residents. He reluctantly walked to the small stage, very aware that his tattoo was now visible to hundreds of people. As he shook hands with the mayor, Marcus spotted Jake Morrison in the crowd with his phone out, clearly photographing Marcus's arm. But Jake wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a man in an expensive suit who definitely wasn't from Cedar Falls. The man was speaking into an earpiece while watching Marcus intently. After the ceremony, Marcus began walking toward his truck, but he could sense people following him. He ducked into Betty's diner, hoping the familiar environment would provide some protection. Patricia was already there, sitting at the same counter where they had first met. "Did you see them?" she asked quietly. "At least 6 that I counted, maybe more. Professional surveillance team, not local troublemakers." Marcus ordered coffee, his hand staying close to his concealed weapon. "The blonde woman approached me during the speech," Patricia said. "Claimed to be a journalist writing about military tattoos. Asked if she could interview me about mine. What did you tell her?" "That I'd think about it." "But Marcus, she knew things about the tattoo program that aren't in any public records. She mentioned Operation Silent Thunder by name." Before Marcus could respond, the diner door chimed and 3 men in dark suits entered. They weren't trying to be subtle anymore. One of them approached the counter while the other 2 positioned themselves near the exits. "Mr. Williams, Miss Hayes," the lead man said politely. "My name is Agent Thompson. We need to have a conversation about your military service." "Are we under arrest?" Patricia asked, her voice steady. "Not at all, but there are some national security concerns that require your cooperation." Marcus turned to face the agent fully. "What kind of concerns?" Agent Thompson glanced around the diner, noting that several locals were listening intently. "Perhaps we could discuss this somewhere more private." "I like it just fine here," Marcus replied. "Betty makes good coffee, and these folks have a right to know if their tax dollars are being spent harassing veterans." The agent's polite facade slipped slightly. "Mr. Williams, the information encoded in your tattoo could be extremely valuable to foreign adversaries. We need to ensure it remains secure." "Funny," Patricia interjected. "When we got these tattoos, we were told they were a way to protect national security. Now you're saying they're a threat to it?" "Times change. The geopolitical landscape is different now." Marcus studied the agent's face, looking for tells. "You're not government, are you? Real federal agents would have shown identification and explained their authority. You're private contractors, probably working for someone who wants what's in our skin." Agent Thompson's hand moved slightly toward his jacket, but stopped when he realized the entire diner was watching. "Mr. Williams, you're making this more difficult than it needs to be." "Good," Marcus replied. "Because easy is how veterans end up dead in apparent robberies." The tension in the diner was thick enough to cut with a knife. Betty had stopped pretending to work and was openly staring at the confrontation. Even Jake Morrison, who had slipped in during the exchange, looked nervous about what he had gotten himself involved in. Agent Thompson realized he was losing control of the situation. "We'll be in touch," he said, finally signaling to his men. They left the diner, but Marcus knew they wouldn't go far. "Well," Patricia said, taking a sip of her coffee, "I'd say we definitely got their attention." "Now what?" Marcus asked. "Now we figure out who they really are and what they want with our tattoos. And we do it before they decide to stop asking nicely." Through the diner window, Marcus could see the black sedan parked across the street, its occupants making no effort to hide their presence. The game had changed, and he knew that his quiet retirement in Cedar Falls was officially over. That night, Marcus didn't go home. Instead, he met Patricia at an abandoned farm outside of town, a location they had agreed upon using hand signals in the diner. Patricia had contacted her remaining military connections, and the news wasn't good. "I reached General Morrison at the Pentagon," she said, her face grim in the moonlight. "He told me officially that there is no ongoing threat to veterans with encoded tattoos. Unofficially, he suggested I take a long vacation somewhere remote." Marcus checked his watch. "So our own government is either involved or powerless to help. What about the other veterans you contacted?" Sarah Chen in Colorado stopped answering her phone 2 days ago. "Michael Torres in Texas sent me one text message. They found me. Trust no one." Patricia pulled out a smartphone and showed Marcus the screen. "That was the last communication I received from any of them. So we're on our own." Marcus wasn't surprised, but the confirmation still hit hard. "Do we know anything more about who these people are?" Patricia nodded and pulled out a tablet. "I managed to get a partial license plate from one of the surveillance cars and ran it through some databases I still have access to. The car is registered to a shell company called Meridian Solutions. Never heard of them. Neither had I, but I did some digging. Meridian Solutions is owned by a larger corporation called Blackstone Dynamics, which is owned by another company, and so on. It took me 6 layers to find the real owner." She showed Marcus a photograph on the tablet. It was a man in his 60s with silver hair and cold blue eyes, wearing an expensive suit. Viktor Kozlov, former Soviet intelligence officer turned private military contractor. He specializes in acquiring and selling classified information to the highest bidder. Marcus studied the photo. "So we're dealing with a foreign national who buys and sells military secrets. That explains why they want our tattoos. It gets worse. According to my sources, Kozlov has been systematically hunting down veterans with encoded tattoos for the past 2 years. He's already obtained information from at least 12 different soldiers, some voluntarily and others—" Patricia's voice trailed off. "Others weren't so lucky," Marcus finished. "How does he know which veterans to target?" "That's where it gets interesting. Remember Jake Morrison from the diner? I did some research on him too. Turns out his family has significant gambling debts, and his father recently started receiving large cash payments from an unknown source." Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. So Kozlov or his people approached the Morrison family, offered to pay off their debts in exchange for information about local veterans. And when you showed up in town with an obvious military tattoo, Jake was probably instructed to get close to you and report back. A car engine sounded in the distance, and both veterans immediately went on alert. Marcus drew his pistol while Patricia moved to a position where she could see the approach road. "2 vehicles, she whispered, moving without headlights. "Time to go." Marcus grabbed his gear bag. "Did you bring what I asked for?" Patricia handed him a small device that looked like a modified smartphone. "Military-grade GPS tracker and emergency beacon. If we get separated, activate it and I'll be able to find you." They moved quickly through the wooded area behind the farm, using night vision equipment that Patricia had acquired through her old contacts. The vehicle stopped at the farmhouse, and Marcus could see armed figures moving through the darkness with professional efficiency. "They're not taking any chances this time," Patricia observed. "Full tactical gear, night vision, coordinated movement patterns. Kozlov must be getting desperate. Or maybe he has a buyer waiting for the information." Marcus led them to a backup vehicle hidden in a barn about half a mile away. "Where to now?" "I have a safe house about 2 hours north of here. Former military property that's not on any official records." Patricia started the engine and pulled out without turning on the headlights. "But Marcus, we need to talk about our options." As they drove through the back roads, Patricia laid out their situation. "We can run, keep hiding, and hope Kozlov eventually gives up. We can try to contact the media and make this public, though that would expose classified information. Or we take the fight to him," Marcus said. "That's the option I was hoping you'd choose. I've been thinking about this since yesterday. Kozlov wants our tattoos because they contain valuable intelligence. But what if we could turn that against him?" Marcus was intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" "The information in my tattoo includes contact codes for intelligence assets in 3 different countries. Some of those assets might still be active, and they would definitely be interested in stopping someone like Kozlov from selling military secrets. You want to reach out to foreign intelligence services? Not exactly. I want to reach out to people who have as much reason to hate arms dealers and information brokers as we do. People who might be willing to help us stop Kozlov permanently. They arrived at the safe house just before dawn. It was a small cabin hidden deep in the woods with no visible power lines or phone connections. Patricia had stocked it with supplies and equipment over the past several months, apparently anticipating the need for a secure location. How long have you been planning for this? Marcus asked as he examined the military-grade communication equipment. Since the first veteran with an encoded tattoo turned up dead 8 months ago, I knew eventually they would come for all of us. Patricia began setting up the radio. The question was whether I could figure out who they were before they found me. Marcus helped her establish a secure communication link. And now that we know it's Kozlov, now we use every resource we have to stop him. The information in our tattoos was meant to protect American soldiers and their missions. If Kozlov sells it to hostile foreign governments or terrorist organizations, people will die. The radio crackled to life, and Patricia began transmitting coded messages to contacts around the world. Marcus watched her work, impressed by her efficiency and professionalism. Even in retirement, she was still very much a soldier. There, she said, finishing her transmissions, I've reached out to 5 different assets, people who can help us track Kozlov's movements and maybe even the location of his base of operations. How long before we hear back? Could be hours, could be days. But while we wait, we need to prepare for the possibility that Kozlov will find us here. Marcus nodded and began checking the cabin's defensive positions. What about the other veterans? If Kozlov is systematically hunting people with these tattoos, we might not be the only ones left. Patricia pulled up a map on her tablet and marked several locations. There are at least 6 others that I know of who might still be alive. The problem is reaching them before Kozlov does. Then we'd better work fast, Marcus said, settling in for what he knew would be a long and dangerous few days. Outside the cabin, the morning sun filtered through the trees, but both veterans knew that their enemies would soon be looking for them. The hunt had begun in earnest, and there was no turning back now. The first response came 18 hours later, crackling through the encrypted radio in the form of Morse code. Patricia translated the message quickly, her face growing darker with each word. It's from Agent Nightingale in Berlin, she said. Kozlov has been actively shopping intelligence to several foreign governments. The bidding for what he calls the American Archive closes in 72 hours. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The American Archive. He's selling information from multiple tattoos, not just targeting us individually. Gets worse. Nightingale says Kozlov has been advertising specific intelligence about deep cover operations in the Middle East and Central Asia. That information could expose dozens of current assets and ongoing missions. A second message came through, this one from someone calling themselves Phoenix in Singapore. The news was even more disturbing. 3 more veterans with encoded tattoos had disappeared in the past week, including Sarah Chen, whose location had been unknown since she stopped responding to Patricia's calls. He's accelerating his timeline, Marcus observed, either because he has enough information to make the sale, or because he knows we're trying to stop him. Patricia was already preparing to transmit a response when a third message arrived. This one containing coordinates and a simple phrase, found the wolf's den. That's from Falcon, Patricia explained. Former Delta Force operator turned private intelligence contractor. If he's located Kozlov's base of operations, we might actually have a chance to stop this. The coordinates led to a remote compound in Montana, about 600 miles from their current location. Satellite images that Falcon transmitted showed a heavily fortified facility with multiple buildings, helicopter landing pads, and what appeared to be serious security measures. This isn't going to be a simple raid, Marcus said, studying the images. Kozlov has private military contractors, electronic surveillance, and who knows what kind of backup plans. True, but we have something he doesn't expect. Patricia pointed to their tattoos. He thinks of these as sources of information to be extracted, but they were designed to help soldiers survive behind enemy lines. Every symbol, every number has a purpose beyond just carrying data. Marcus looked at his tattoo with new understanding. You're talking about using the information in our skin as operational intelligence. Exactly. My tattoo contains safe house locations, emergency contact protocols and extraction routes that were designed for exactly this kind of situation. Some of that information might still be valid. They spent the next several hours planning their approach. Patricia's military contacts had provided them with additional intelligence about Kozlov's operation, including guard rotations, communication frequencies, and the layout of the compound. According to Falcon, Kozlov is holding at least 4 veterans at the facility, Patricia said. They're being kept alive because he needs them to verify the accuracy of the information before completing the sale. So this is both a rescue mission and an intelligence operation. Marcus was already thinking about equipment and timing. When do we move? Tonight, Falcon is coordinating with 2 other assets to create diversions at other Kozlov properties. If we time this right, we can hit the main compound while their security is divided. As the sun set, Marcus and Patricia made their final preparations. They had acquired additional weapons and equipment through Patricia's network, including night vision gear, explosives, and military-grade communication devices. One more thing, Patricia said as they prepared to leave the safe house. If something happens to me during this operation, you need to make sure the information in these tattoos doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Marcus understood what she was implying. Same goes for you, but let's plan on both of us making it out alive. The drive to Montana took 8 hours, most of it on back roads to avoid surveillance. They parked 5 miles from the compound and hiked through dense forest, using GPS coordinates from Patricia's tattoo to navigate to a pre-positioned cache of additional supplies. This cache was established in 1995, Patricia explained as they retrieved additional ammunition and explosive devices. Part of a network designed to support deep cover operations in North America. How many of these sites are there? That information died with the program, but there are probably dozens scattered across the country, forgotten by everyone except the people who carry the locations in their skin. They reached the perimeter of Kozlov's compound just after midnight. The facility was larger than the satellite images had suggested, with multiple guard towers and roving patrols. Through night vision binoculars, Marcus could see at least 20 armed guards, all carrying military-grade weapons. Thermal imaging shows the main building has people on the 2nd floor, Patricia whispered, studying her equipment. That's probably where they're holding the veterans. What about Kozlov himself? Building 3, according to the intelligence. That's where the communication center is located. They split up, with Marcus moving toward the detention building, while Patricia prepared to infiltrate the communication center. The plan was to rescue the captured veterans first, then destroy Kozlov's ability to complete the intelligence sale. Marcus disabled 2 guards silently, using skills he had hoped never to need again. The detention building was lightly guarded, probably because Kozlov assumed his prisoners were too valuable to kill and too weak to escape. Inside, Marcus found 4 veterans in various states of physical and psychological distress. Sarah Chen was among them, barely conscious but alive. All of them had been photographed extensively, with detailed images of their tattoos pinned to walls like some kind of gruesome art exhibit. "Can you move?" Marcus whispered to Sarah as he cut her restraints. "I think so," she replied weakly. "They've been drugging us, but I've been pretending to be more affected than I really am." "Good. Help me get the others ready to move. We have maybe 10 minutes before someone notices the missing guards." While Marcus worked to free the prisoners, Patricia had infiltrated the communication center. She found Kozlov's operation was even more extensive than they had imagined. Files on dozens of veterans were spread across multiple workstations, with detailed analysis of the encoded information in their tattoos. But what shocked her most was a large map showing the locations of every known veteran with an encoded tattoo. Red pins marked those who had been acquired, yellow pins showed current targets, and green pins indicated veterans whose information had already been sold. There were over 60 pins on the map. Patricia began photographing everything she could, knowing this intelligence would be crucial for protecting the remaining veterans. That's when she heard Victor Kozlov's voice behind her. "Colonel Hayes, I presume?" She turned slowly to find the silver-haired man standing in the doorway with 2 armed guards. He was exactly as she had expected, cold, calculating, and completely confident in his control of the situation. "Mr. Kozlov, your reputation precedes you, as does yours," Former military intelligence expert in deep cover operations and the owner of one of the most valuable tattoos in my collection. Kozlov stepped into the room, his eyes never leaving Patricia's face. I must admit I didn't expect you to come to me so directly. Sometimes the direct approach is the most effective, Kozlov laughed. Indeed. And where is your partner, Mr. Williams? My men lost track of him about 20 minutes ago. I'm sure you'll find him eventually. Actually, I don't think we will. Kozlov pulled out a tablet and showed Patricia a live video feed from inside the detention building. It was empty. It seems your rescue mission was successful. Congratulations. Patricia tried not to show her relief. Marcus had gotten the prisoners out, which meant the primary objective was complete. Now she just had to survive long enough to ensure Kozlov couldn't continue his operation. The information in your tattoo is particularly valuable, Kozlov continued, seemingly unconcerned about the escaped prisoners. Operation Silent Thunder established intelligence networks that are still active today. My buyers are very interested in those contact codes. Those networks were disbanded years ago. Some were. Others evolved, became part of different operations. The beauty of your military's bureaucracy is that the left hand often doesn't know what the right hand is doing. An explosion rocked the building, and the lights flickered. Kozlov's confident expression faltered for the first time. That would be the backup generator, Patricia said calmly. Mr. Williams was always good with explosives. Kozlov barked orders to his guards in Russian, then turned back to Patricia. No matter. We have backup systems and my buyers can wait another day or two. But you've caused me considerable inconvenience. Good. I'd hate to think this was easy for you. Another explosion closer this time. Patricia could hear automatic weapons fire and shouting from multiple directions. Marcus wasn't just conducting a rescue operation. He was systematically dismantling Kozlov's entire facility. Your tattoo, Colonel. I can take the information I need from you willingly, or I can take it from your corpse. The choice is yours, Patricia smiled. Actually, there's a third option you haven't considered, which is, the information in my tattoo includes self-destruct protocols for intelligence networks. If those codes are transmitted incorrectly, or under duress, they trigger security measures that destroy the very assets you're trying to sell. For the first time, Kozlov looked genuinely concerned. You're bluffing. Am I? How much are you willing to risk? Your buyers won't pay for intelligence that leads them into a trap. The lights went out completely, and emergency lighting cast eerie red shadows throughout the room. In the distance, Patricia could hear helicopters approaching. Falcon, she said. Right on time. Kozlov realized his operation was collapsing around him. Kill her, he ordered his guards. We'll take our chances with the tattoo information we already have. But before the guards could raise their weapons, the room's windows exploded inward as smoke grenades filled the space. Patricia dove behind a desk as automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple directions. When the smoke cleared, Kozlov and his guards were down, and Marcus was standing in the doorway with a tactical team Patricia didn't recognize. Falcon's people, Marcus explained as he helped her up. Turns out stopping arms dealers who target veterans is a popular cause in certain circles. The other prisoners? Safe, already evacuated by helicopter. Sarah Chen is going to need medical attention, but they'll all recover. Patricia looked around at the destroyed communication center. Did we get everything? Every hard drive, every file, every piece of intelligence Kozlov had collected. More importantly, we got the complete list of targeted veterans. We can warn them before anyone else gets hurt. As they walked out of the compound, Patricia felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't realized was there. The tattoo on her arm would always carry secrets, but now those secrets could remain where they belonged, safely hidden in plain sight. So what happens now? Marcus asked as they reached the helicopter that would take them away from Kozlov's destroyed operation. Now we go home, and we make sure something like this never happens again. 6 months later, Marcus Williams walked into Betty's diner in Cedar Falls with his sleeves rolled up, just as he had on that first day. But everything was different now. The town had embraced him as a genuine hero, and the story of his confrontation with international criminals had become local legend. Jake Morrison was sitting at the same corner booth where he had once mocked Marcus's tattoo. When he saw Marcus enter, Jake stood up and approached him nervously. Mr. Williams, I wanted to apologize again for what happened before. I know I already said sorry, but I feel terrible about getting involved with those people. Marcus shook his hand. Jake, you were in over your head with dangerous people. The important thing is that you came forward and helped us when it mattered. It was true. Jake had provided crucial information about Kozlov's surveillance methods and had even helped coordinate the timing of the rescue operation. His guilt over being manipulated had motivated him to make amends in a significant way. Betty brought Marcus his usual coffee and apple pie without being asked. Any word from Colonel Hayes? She asked. Patricia's doing well. She's working with the Pentagon to establish better security protocols for veterans with classified information. Turns out our little adventure caught some important people's attention. What Marcus didn't mention was that Patricia had been promoted to a special advisory position, helping to create a new program to protect military personnel who carried sensitive information. The encoded tattoo program had been officially terminated, but there were still dozens of veterans like Marcus who carried decades-old secrets in their skin. And those other veterans who were captured, all recovered completely. Sarah Chen actually stopped by last week. She's thinking about settling down somewhere quiet, maybe starting a small business. Marcus smiled. I recommended Cedar Falls. Told her it's the kind of place where people look out for each other. Through the window, Marcus could see the new memorial that had been erected in the town square. It honored not just local veterans, but all military personnel who had served in classified operations. A small plaque mentioned that some secrets were worth keeping, while others were worth revealing. The memorial had been Patricia's idea. She had argued that while the specific details of classified operations should remain secret, the sacrifice and courage of the people who carried out those operations deserved recognition. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Falcon, the mysterious operative who had helped coordinate the attack on Kozlov's compound. The message was brief. Package delivered safely. The Wolf's associates have been dealt with. Over the past 6 months, the network of intelligence professionals that Patricia had activated during their crisis had continued working to eliminate the threat posed by Kozlov's operation. Other arms dealers who had been trafficking in stolen military intelligence had been quietly neutralized, and the market for such information had largely collapsed. Everything all right? Betty asked, noticing Marcus reading his phone. Everything's fine. Just some old friends checking in. The truth was that Marcus had discovered something during the mission that he hadn't expected, a new sense of purpose. The quiet retirement he had planned for himself felt empty, compared to the satisfaction of protecting fellow veterans and defending national security. Patricia had offered him a position with her new Pentagon advisory team, but Marcus had declined. Instead, he had started his own small organization, funded quietly by government sources, dedicated to protecting veterans who might be targeted because of their service. The Silent Guardians, he had named it, a network of former military personnel who watched out for each other and responded when threats emerged. It wasn't official and it wasn't publicized, but it was effective. His tattoo had become a symbol for the organization. Not the specific encoded information it contained, but what it represented: sacrifice, brotherhood, and the willingness to carry burdens that others couldn't understand. A new customer entered the diner, a young woman in military fatigues with the bearing of someone recently returned from deployment. She took a seat at the counter and ordered coffee, her own tattoo visible on her forearm. It wasn't an encoded military tattoo, just a unit insignia, but Marcus recognized the look in her eyes. First time in Cedar Falls? He asked. Yes, sir. I'm driving cross-country, trying to figure out what comes next after 8 years in the Army. Well, you picked a good place to stop. The people here appreciate military service and they understand that some stories take time to tell. The young woman smiled. Are you a veteran? Marcus rolled up his sleeve a little more, showing his tattoo clearly. I am. And if you ever need anything, anyone to talk to or help with whatever comes next, there are people who care about that. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. As Marcus finished his pie and prepared to leave, he thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. He had come to Cedar Falls looking for peace and anonymity, hoping to leave his past behind. Instead, he had discovered that his past was exactly what made him valuable. The tattoo on his arm would always carry secrets, but it also carried something more important: the commitment to protect those who had served and to ensure that their sacrifices were never forgotten or exploited. Betty handed him his check, but Marcus waved it away. "It's on the house, hero," she said with a smile. "I'm not a hero, Betty. I'm just a soldier who found the right fight." Outside the diner, Marcus looked up at the clear autumn sky and felt something he hadn't experienced in years: complete peace with his choices. The quiet town of Cedar Falls had given him sanctuary when he needed it, and in return he had given it a story that would be told for generations. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Patricia. New situation developing in Oregon. 3 veterans with encoded tattoos have gone missing. Interested? Marcus looked back at the diner, at the town square with its memorial, at the community that had embraced him despite not fully understanding who he was or what he had done. Then he typed back, "On my way." Some secrets were worth keeping, but some fights were worth having. And Marcus Williams had finally found the balance between the two. He climbed into his truck and headed toward the highway, his tattoo catching the afternoon sunlight one last time before disappearing under his sleeve. The ink held secrets, just as the colonel had said, but those secrets had led him exactly where he needed to be. The Guardian was ready for whatever came next.